Okay, welcome to the video where we are going to look at disassembly of the Young's Ambidex No.1. And this is an antique fishing reel. It was probably made around the 1930s to the 1950s maybe. It's a zinc cast frame and it has a removable drag on the front, and it's a half bale model too, which is not so common these days. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is just remove the drag on the front of the reel here. It's like a cap. It's patented. I don't know if it's the same patent as Mitchell, but it's patented, and essentially you unscrew it and then it's on a flatted shaft here, and there's not much you can really do with that. You can't disassemble that any further. And once you've done that, the spool, of course, as you must be familiar with, will just come out, and you can then see the inside of the reel chamber where the reflex arm is, and this is the counterweight just here, and this is the shaft that moves up and down when you wind, and this here is the spring which makes the bail arm work. Okay, just a word about the spool. The spool is pretty much a fixed piece except for taking the line off. There's not really much you can really further disassemble on this. Okay, so the next part of the disassembly is essentially to remove the counterweight. Now the counterweight, as you can see there, just here, this actually holds the spring for the bail arm, so it's quite a dual function part in that respect. So we take the screw out, and then you can remove the counterweight, and the spring will come loose. And you can hear it click there. And so now we're in a position where we can get the bail arm off. Okay, so removal of the bail arm on the Young's Ambidex No.1. You can see here there's a screw with a very slight curvature in it, and another screw here. This screw stops that one from moving around, so that this one here has plenty of play in it. So it basically has it at a fixed point. Now this arm won't come out until this little piece here. This is the notch which hits a bar underneath here, which flicks the bail arm out. You can't really get the bail arm off without taking that off. So you need to take that off first, and then you need to take the locking screw out, and then you need to take the half cut screw out. Okay, so once the half cut screw is out, there you go, you can lift the bail arm free. As far as I can see, that bail arm is actually pretty much the right shape. Now that completes the drum disassembly. You probably don't need to take the spring off. It's a fairly tough spring, and doesn't really need servicing in any way. The next section is to take the body apart and start removing the mechanics. Okay, so next in the disassembly, they're going to remove the handle, and that's just basically just take the screw out. Now these are on a flatted shaft, so they're not left on thread or anything like that. So you just essentially pull the handle off like so. And this particular model has a normal left-hand thread on here, so you can take that off. And that you can put a very tiny little bit of grease in there. You shouldn't really grease sliding parts though, but you could put a bit of reel oil on this, but put it on after you've put the thread in, so you don't want oil on the threads, or too much oil on the threads, otherwise it'll come slack when you're trying to wind the fishing reel, which is not a good idea. So next in the disassembly, we're just going to remove the Ambidex handle cap screw. Now the shaft may rotate when you do this, so you might need to put the handle on to do this, but in this particular case it's pretty loose. And we're also going to take off the oil spig cover. That's the oiling cover. It's just there so that when you oil the reel down, there's a little hole. Yeah, just there. That's the oiling hole where you put the oil. Okay. Next in the disassembly is to remove the two screws which hold the cover plate on. So the cover plate just comes away, and it's quite a tight fit on the shaft there. Right, so here we are inside the reel. We're going to start the disassembly procedure. Okay, so the next step in disassembly is there's a pin here, and it's not fixed down. It's only held in place by the cover plate. So if you pull that pin, it'll just come out, and that's that. Done. Okay, now the pin's out. Disassembly of the main body is essentially you take this screw out. It's actually quite simple really. This part doesn't usually have a lot of wear on it, so it's okay usually. And that just lifts off. And then the cog shaft just lifts off. That's just a brass runner on there, and it should be a fairly tight fit with very little play, and if you get one like that then it's a good reel. The last part here is this, which just slides off now that the pin's been removed. You can see where the pin went on the end there. So we're now pretty much left with just the drum, and the drum comes out by taking these two lock nuts off, and that's not difficult. Now just dismantling the main shaft, and this is possibly the trickiest part of the video. You've got to unscrew this and unscrew this, and then it comes out, and then inside there's a set of ball bearings, so you've got to be very careful that you don't lose them, because if they haven't been lubricated for a while they will be loose, and if they're loose they'll go all over the floor. Okay, so beware. Okay, now this piece, you can get, believe it or not, you can get a plumber's wrench in here, just the type that has a right angle head on it, and then you can slacken these off. You need to unscrew the end one first. These are already slack, by the way, because I did the old Blue Peter. So there's one of them away, and there's another one away. So if you pull the shaft a little, and it's a bit stiff because there's a fibre washer on there, you can hear it clicking, and that should allow the other one to come off, and then you should be able to get the shaft off. Now, as I previously said, there's a lot of ball bearings in there, so you've got to be really careful you don't lose the ball bearings. So firstly, note that fibre washer has to go back, and then turn it upside down just to make sure we haven't lost any ball bearings. So fibre washer comes off there, and you've got a set of ball bearings in there, and they do come off like so, and there's another fibre washer in there which will also come off. So it's important before you reassemble that you clean these splines out of any hardened grease, and the same with the cogs on the cam. Okay. Right, so that completes the disassembly of the Young's Ambidex No.1. Look out for the reassembly rebuilding video, and this is Avian Fish signing off now. Thanks very much for watching.